So I hear a lot of people talk about the future of the DCEU, and some people are talking about how the DCEU, its future is not very bright, etc., etc. There's a lot of talk about the DCEU's future, but I just want to use the actual movies themselves and just show you how rich the DCEU's future is and how connected this universe is in many different ways and aspects, and how it really points to an interesting future. So let's start off with Man of Steel. The first interesting point there is the open pod in Man of Steel. When Kal-El goes to the ship, of course he's known by the Earthling name Clark, and he discovers the dead Kryptonian bodies inside of the scout ship. And he learns more about the story of why we have dead Kryptonians in the scout ship. Of course, if you've read the prequel comics, you'd find out that that particular scout ship that he went to, the crew was actually murdered, but that's another story for another day. But nonetheless, he sees this open pod. And if you've read the prequel comic, you know that the story behind that is that one guy comes, murders almost all the crew. Kal-El survives. She wakes up from her sleep. The guy chose not to kill her. But in the end, one Kryptonian walks out of the ship. Now, this is some 18,000 plus years ago. So the question is, was that Kryptonian Kal-El, which would be Supergirl, did she escape? Did she walk away 18,000 years ago, or did she end up freezing in the ice? What happened to her? So that's a great question. Is she alive? And if she is alive, then there's the potential for Supergirl in this universe. The question is she alive? Did she survive? And also, very importantly, what happened to her? Is she aging? Is she alive and frozen somewhere? These are all the questions we have. And so at some point, the DC is going to deal with this and handle this, and we'll go back to Man of Steel and see that. And so that in itself is very intriguing. Then we have General Zod's army. They were sucked back into the Phantom Zone in Man of Steel. The question is, did they survive in the Phantom Zone? And is it possible that they can return from that Phantom Zone? Now, the first time they came out of the Phantom Zone was because Krypton was destroyed, and the machinery that put them into the Phantom Zone was no longer working, so they came out. Now, in this case, there is another question I would like to add. If there were other people trapped in the Phantom Zone, did they come out? And the question would be, did they survive long enough to also retrofit their ship or whatever they were in and be able to go somewhere else? So these are all questions that are up there, because Zod and his army weren't the only people that were in the Phantom Zone. There were other people. Which leads us to, now that they have been sucked into the Phantom Zone, into a certain singularity, did they go back to where they were, or did they go somewhere else? And are they alone in that Phantom Zone? So all of these questions are there. The other questions that you can always ask are, did Colonel Hardy, did he survive that? You saw the big explosion. And did Faora Ul, did she survive the crash as well as Dr. Emil Hamilton? Now, we all know Dr. Emil Hamilton becomes a villain later on. So the question really is, if they do survive and they end up inside of this Phantom Zone, did they all mingle together? What happened as a result of that? So in the comics, Dr. Emil Hamilton, he turns bad. So I'm curious about when we will see these characters again, if we will see them again. And it's just, there's such an open door for that. And what timing will this happen, or when will this happen? And it really gets more and more interesting as you think about the other players in the DCEU, as we'll get around to them in a minute. Now, the other very interesting thing that's overlooked by a lot of people was when Superman and General Zod were fighting, there were a number of buildings that really hint to certain characters in the DCEU. Now, most people were focused on the Lex Luthor, the LexCorp buildings, and the Wayne Enterprise buildings. But there were a ton of other buildings out there. And one of them was the Utopia Casino. It so happened that the Utopia Casino in DC Comics was owned by Anthony Gallo, or Tony Gallo. His parents and family came from South America. They were involved in drugs. Father was killed by the mother. The mother was killed by the goons that the father had. And so anyway, Tony ended up in Metropolis. He was from he also hung out in Nevada. What's interesting about Tony is in the comics, he was the first guy to expose Superman to kryptonite in the comic book Superman Confidential. So it's very interesting. Of course, Lex Luthor was the first to highlight the kryptonite, discover it, find it, and Batman was the first one to expose Superman to it in Batman v Superman. But the point is there's some legitimacy to Anthony Gallo and his casino, Utopia Casino, in Metropolis, and that hints us to what would this guy's role be playing in future Superman movies. So it's just something to just kind of keep your mind on. Now, maybe Lex Luthor discovered about kryptonite that way, but there's a lot more I got to say about the discovery of it, the scientists who helped him, and so on. We'll talk about that in a minute. But in Man of Steel, we also had Captain Carol Farris. And Captain Carol Farris, or Carol Farris, she happened to become Star Sapphire in DC Comics. And that hints to the Green Lantern Corps because she was actually considered the love interest of Hal Jordan, who was a Green Lantern. So way back in Man of Steel, we had hints towards the Green Lantern Corps, and that's very interesting. And then we see her again elevated to Major Carol Farris in Batman v Superman, along with General Swanwick, who became not General Swanwick now, but he was, I think, Secretary Swanwick, Secretary General of the United States of America. Now, this is interesting because if I would just elaborate a little bit more on the Green Lantern Corps, we actually saw a Green Lantern, Yarlan Gur, in Justice League. Great Green Lantern, he ends up dying at the hands of Steppenwolf in the First Great War, and you see his ring speed off to find another lantern. But what's very interesting is that Yarlan Gur was one of the greatest lanterns. He was one of the oldest lanterns as well. And so that also hints to the Green Lantern Corps being present before Man of Steel. And so the hint of Star Sapphire being the love interest of Hal Jordan makes sense. So it'd be interesting to see how John Stewart and Hal Jordan actually play out in this universe. I don't know what exactly is going to happen, but that's a nice hint there. Now, I was telling you guys about Tony Gallo and the kryptonite, and I told you that there was actually a doctor who was helping Lex Luthor discover the kryptonite. That would be Dr. Emmett Vale. So I wouldn't be surprised if somehow maybe Tony Gallo has something to do with Dr. Emmett Vale. Now, I haven't used kryptonite on General Zod's body. We know that Superman was exposed to kryptonite before even all of this in Man of Steel when he was fighting the World Engine. He's actually dealing with not just Kryptonian dust particles, which also weaken him, but also, I believe, kryptonite crystals from the World Engine and the surroundings. So, and of course, where the World Engine was, we found this kryptonite. So it wasn't surprising that that happened. Now, let's look at Dr. Emmett Vale. What about Dr. Emmett Vale is interesting? Well, Dr. Emmett Vale, who was always interested in alien technology and alien stuff, and is probably one of the guys who helped Lex Luthor pool together his metahuman files. Dr. Emmett Vale was the creator of Metallo. And this is Dr. Emmett Vale here. So Metallo, there's a possibility of Metallo being in this universe. And it goes even further, where LexCorp seemed to have something to do with Brainiac. And we knew this from some out of the movie online stuff where Brainiac is actually showing up in the DC stuff. So we not only are talking about Dr. Emmett Vale dealing with Metallo, but we also have Brainiac that exists somewhere in this universe. So it just gets very, very interesting very, very fast. Of course, we have Krypton, and we were hearing about Brainiac there too. But it's just crazy that Brainiac's also existing in this universe. Now think about the possibilities of these characters I'm mentioning to you, okay? We're not talking about the major characters like the Joker and all the major ones like, you know, Lex Luthor and Batman. No. We're talking about some serious names here, okay? And we're not done. So here we have Bruce Wayne. He was looking at Jason Todd's Robin suit, right? Now the question we have to ask is Jason Todd still dead? Or is he somehow existing as the Red Hood? These are great questions because we know Nightwing exists in this universe. And there will be a Nightwing movie coming out quite soon. So what it says to us is Jason Todd truly dead? That's the question. Now, in Suicide Squad, we know that Harley Quinn was an accomplice to killing the Robin. The question is the Robin still dead? Does Ra's al Ghul exist in this universe? I mean, there's a lot of questions we can ask, and it makes for very intriguing, interesting storylines, and that's why the future of the DCU is so bright, because there are just so many interesting stories to tell. Now, this is a great question. Again, this has to do with BVS. I'm moving along in the order the movies go, right? So in BVS, Doomsday died, and he was stabbed in his chest by the Kryptonian spear. I gotta ask people, where is that kryptonite right now? Did Batman take back the kryptonite and the kryptonite spear? Who has that kryptonite right now? The second question is, who has Doomsday's body? We know Doomsday is dead, but Superman was dead also. Superman was brought to life. Who's to say someone can't bring Doomsday back to life? These are all interesting questions because we have the 3 mother boxes still, and we don't know what has happened to them, right? Somebody had to dispose of those 3 mother boxes. They wouldn't keep them together, so that's another very interesting question. And that leads us to yet another question, because there's so many. What happened to Incubus in Suicide Squad? And I want you to think about what I'm saying, because all of these little pieces, they add up. They add up. These are questions, and they're just out there. Incubus, is he truly dead? There was a big explosion. They defused a bomb. They blew up Incubus. They blew up Diablo. We know Diablo's coming back for Suicide Squad 2, because Diablo cannot be destroyed by fire or explosions, because he's pure fire. That's what Diablo feeds off of fire. So we know Diablo's not dead. Is Incubus dead? In fact, is Enchantress dead? These are all very interesting questions. June Moon is alive. We know that. We know Enchantress is no longer linked to June Moon. But isn't it true that Enchantress can get into different spirits of different people? That because she's a spirit and she comes from another dimension, she could just inhabit another body. Incubus inhabited another body, right? So even though her heart's dead, just crushed, does that mean that she's dead? These are all really interesting questions to explore. Now, on top of thinking of the variables, is Enchantress dead? Is Incubus dead? We know Diablo's not dead. We have the Suicide Squad to deal with in this universe. And interestingly enough, the last discourse between Bruce Wayne and Amanda Waller, Bruce Wayne was saying, you better shut that program down, otherwise me and my friends will shut it down for you. And his friends he's talking about is the Justice League friends. Amanda Waller had files on the Flash and Aquaman. I want you to think about what I'm saying now. And she's probably got files on other ones. Bruce Wayne has files on Aquaman and the Flash. My point being this. Amanda Waller has the Suicide Squad. And you have to ask yourself, what would be the relationship with the Suicide Squad? Because they're going to be there. Amanda Waller's not shutting down the squad. They're going to exist. What would be the relationship of the Suicide Squad to the Justice League? And then think about this. This is the part you got to get really interested in. That's Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor at the end of Justice League was talking about a Legion of Doom, or in Justice League, forming a league of their own with Deathstroke. And Deathstroke is a Batman villain. Some of the Suicide Squad members are Batman villains. My question is, besides the Joker that's up in there, suppose some of these characters, Lex Luthor gets his hands on a mother box or something, and he brings back Doomsday. Let's just go there. There's so much to say. His Dr. Emil Vale, Emmett Vale, ends up bringing up Metallo. Just think about what I'm saying here. These are some serious names I'm talking about. They were working on something that had to do with Brainiac. These are some serious names we're talking here. And then throw in the equation that Steppenwolf was talking about this. Steppenwolf was talking about for Darkseid somewhere here. I don't know why I'm not seeing it. It should be here, but is that it? No, that's oh yeah, here we are. Steppenwolf was talking about for Darkseid, and then we see Steppenwolf trying to terraform the world like Apocalypse. His conquering of the world was for Darkseid, which means Darkseid was behind that. Which means if you take Darkseid into the equation, then we're talking about characters like Metallo. We're talking about characters like Brainiac, Deathstroke. I'm not even done. Like the Madhouse just started to begin. Then we got Black Mass that exists in Gotham because Janus Cosmetics, Black Mass is up in there. Gotham City Sirens exist in here. We're talking about Poison Ivy, we're talking about Catwoman, and we're talking about Harley Quinn. They team up to become the Gotham City Sirens. And then the madness is not done because it's like a villains gallery we're talking here. You gotta remember, the Joker's in this world. All of those guys from Suicide Squad are there. But then, in addition to that, we also have another character, it slipped my mind, that has to do with Batman. Alright? All of these, and then we don't know if they're going to be in the league with Lex Luthor. Who's going to be in the league with Lex Luthor? Who's going to play both sides of the cards? Will Darkseid have something to do with this? I mean, it's just mind-boggling just thinking about it. And then, as if that's not enough, we're realizing that somehow this Superman scene is connected to Shazam. My guess is that Billy and Freddie were interviewing Superman at the time that this video was done in 2015. Because we saw a behind-the-scenes shot of Freddie wearing a Superman jersey. And then, when I went up to the Instagram of Zach Levy, I see the actor who's playing Freddy, and he's chilling out with Zach Levy. So I'm seriously thinking that Freddy and Zach, who's Shazam and Freddy, they're the ones who go out amongst their family adopted brothers and sisters, and they have met Superman before. So I'm thinking this is connected, and this is hinting to that. I'm not even done, folks. I'm not even done. I'm just getting started. So there's that connection there. So Shazam at some point. We already know Shazam's kind of connected. Shazam's movie's going to happen at some point. But it's just the kickoff. The Gotham City Sirens. Alright, Black Masked. Talked about Darkseid up in there. Oh, we got more, folks. The Hall of Justice. Because Justice League pushed off. Now we're going to have a Hall of Justice. On top of that, we're talking about Cyborg now launching his own movie, because what this is showing is that Cyborg, not only been introduced to Cyborg, seen his role in Justice League, realized he's got alien technology mostly in his body, but now we're actually seeing Cyborg evolve into the Cyborg we know. The relationship he has with his father is still strained, but it's much more of a interdependent relationship, and they're functional. He's working with his dad, okay, which is pretty cool. So that launches off a Cyborg movie. Aquaman's returning to Atlantis and embracing Atlantis, which is launching the Aquaman movie, which we will see very soon. And then we have the Flash. The Flash, is he breaking the space-time barrier when we see him? We know it's a police car chase. They're chasing down someone, and the Flash just kind of disappears into the distance. So is this, if he breaks the space-time barrier, it means we're talking about Flashpoint. Now, Joss Whedon went and had a Flash race Superman. I don't know why he was racing Superman, but that's an interesting a thing. So I don't know how Flashpoint's actually going to fire off with these two brothers who will be directing something like that, but I do see this making the grounds for Flashpoint. Once he breaks the space-time barrier, he can start messing with time. Which leads us to yet another thing that Justice League highlighted. The gap between Wonder Woman coming into the light and everybody seeing her and what she did before, because she talked about they're all like Steve Trevor. So Wonder Woman 2, or whatever it's going to be called, I think Wonder Woman Magic Hour, it's going to be in the 80s. And this is just another piece of Wonder Woman's experience where she was talking about it to Bruce Wayne. And she also mentioned about something like that in Batman v Superman. So it wouldn't be very interesting to see how that pans out in the whole story of Wonder Woman. And again, this is something we have to look forward to. I'm not done, folks. I left the best for last. Superman is back as the Superman we know in Justice League. And that's the complete Superman. That's the Superman we expect. Will he be Clark Kent, first of all? And will he be back at the Daily Planet? I don't know. He's dressed like a reporter. He's dressed like the Clark Kent we know. So I'm not quite sure how they're going to fit that together. The part that's going to be very interesting is that no longer can we call him the Man of Steel like Man of Steel. But he is now Superman. So whatever movie they call it, it's probably going to be titled Superman from here on in. Just like how it was Batman v Superman, now we're going to have Superman. He's no longer called the Man of Steel. Man of Steel was used to say, well, okay, this is him leading up to being Superman. But in Batman v Superman, he was known by the world as Superman. And now, emphatically, after Justice League, definitely he's going to be Superman. In fact, they were calling him Superman. Cyborg was calling him Superman at the end of Justice League. So he's Superman. So the title's probably going to be Superman whatever. So it'll be very interesting. But I know a lot of people are anticipating and waiting for another Superman movie. It's not going to be called Man of Steel 2. I doubt that. It's going to be Superman something. I'm looking forward to that. Because now we have Superman. Not Man of Steel, but Superman now. And I'm looking forward to that. So all of these things in the DCEU you have to look forward to. And these have been mentioned in the movies themselves. And I just thought I would share that with you guys tonight before I go to my bed to sleep. It's pretty late, but still I just wanted to do this. Because I have a feeling that a lot of people really haven't been really putting two and two together with the DCEU to see the kind of possibilities out there and what the movie's actually leading up to and hinting towards. A lot of people have been very pessimistic and we don't trust Warner Brothers and blah, blah, blah. You guys just need to shut up. Because a lot of you don't even know what you're watching. And that's the problem with a lot of these so-called DCEU fans. They are so petty and small-minded that they can't even see how much potential everything has and what WB is actually leading towards and DC is leading towards. But it is what it is. I just wanted to share this with you guys. If you're not excited, get excited. You guys have a great one.